Welcome back to the Ed Show, and thanks for watching tonight, folks. A newly elected Wisconsin congressman says government assistance programs are bribery. Congressman-elect Glenn Grothman slammed the system and its recipients.
A single parent with a couple kids can easily get $35,000 a year in total benefits. When you look at that amount of money, which is in essence a bribe, not to work that hard, or a bribe not to marry somebody with a full-time job, people immediately realize you have a problem. And then as soon as you realize you have a problem and something has to be done, then you look at the generosity of the benefits and see what you can do to pare them back.
Grothman says the anti-poverty programs are creating a reason not to get married.
Well, if you tell somebody you're going to get $35,000 if you don't get married, and you're not going to get anything if you marry somebody making $50 grand a year, I don't know, it's certainly a strong incentive not to raise children in wedlock.
Wisconsin's governor is also blaming welfare recipients for their economic status in life.
Moving our entitlement programs, particularly when it comes to traditional welfare programs, towards a system where it embraces the dignity that comes from work.
Scott Walker advocates drug testing welfare recipients without reasonable suspicion.
Is they can't find enough people who can pass a drug test. So it just seems ridiculous to me that we're going to give people public assistance, particularly if they're able-bodied adults without children.
Seems to me like we have open season on welfare recipients, and it has started in Wisconsin. Grothman wants to take it back to Washington. Joining me tonight is the gentleman in question, the congressman who is newly elected from Wisconsin, State Senator Glenn Grothman. Also with us tonight is Wisconsin Congressman Mark Pocan. Senator, good to have you with us tonight. I appreciate your time. Do you stick to your comments? The 35,000 is a number that I've never heard before. Where are you getting your numbers?
That number's from something called the Wisconsin Legislative Fiscal Bureau. You get different numbers depending upon how much a single parent is making, where they live, how many children they have. The example that I happened to use was an example in which a single parent was making $10,000 a year, had 2 children, 1 of school age and 1 preschool. And I will say I object a little bit to me characterizing me as going after the welfare recipients. Insofar as I'm angry, it's at the politicians who have allowed this system to get out of control and create a situation in which if a single parent wants to get married, they could lose $25,000, $30,000, $35,000 in benefits.
Okay, I want to get back to that in a moment, and I appreciate your response on that. Congressman Pocan, are you aware of the program that Mr. Grothman just talked about, and is that number correct in your opinion?
You know, I served with Glenn in the legislature, and I was the co-chair of the Finance Committee, so I worked with that bureau a lot. And you can give it any amount of information for what you want to get. And those numbers that were submitted are not only fictional, but they're fantastical. They have said that just based on one screening criteria, people who receive TANF and student aid, that would be less than 260 people in a state of 5.5 million people. And that's just on one screening. So it really is a ridiculous argument to put that out there to say it's easy to get that much when if you narrow it down, this is a fantasy family with a fantasy problem on a fantasy issue. And I think it's really a dangerous conversation because when people really need assistance, we collectively get together and do that. But if you think about it, children who get federal health assistance, 6 out of 7 have working parents. Half the people who get food assistance are working, and 6 of the 7, again, have worked within the last year. So really the criteria put out there by the senator is really very misleading and I think ultimately dangerous to even have that.
Mr. Grothman, your response.
It's not misleading at all. Right, we're talking about a single parent who has 2 children who is making $10,000 a year. That's not an outlier. It's not like I used an example of somebody who has 10 kids or something when the benefits.
But Glenn, didn't they say they said that that would be less than at most, just on one screening, 260 people in a state of 5.5 million. So to say that it's easy to get that many benefits when we're being told based on one screening alone, it's that maximum number, that's really disingenuous.
Mark, you haven't seen the memo. In the memo, a small segment, the memo actually came up not with 35,000, it came with 39,000. And of that 39,000 in benefits, only $700 or $800 was towards Pell Grant type programs. That was only that small amount. So when I spoke on another show, I pared back that 39,000 to 35,000, which is a more reasonable number. Now, it is true, some people make more than $10,000. And if you made like $20,000, that number would be less. Maybe that number would be $26,000, $27,000, I'm not sure. If I would have given the Fiscal Bureau a situation in which a single parent had 4 kids, maybe that $39,000 number would have gone up to 44, 45, or 47,000.
Glenn, what you said on
know.
TV and what you're going around saying is that it's easy to make $35,000 a year, and that
yes,
we are bribing people not to work, and that is completely either
that is true.
Said in error or said maliciously, because it's not true based on many standards. You got 2 Pinocchios today from the Washington Post. You know, everyone is going through looking at this and saying what you're saying isn't true, and yet you still won't back down from it.
It is absolutely true, Mark. You add up the daycare benefits, the earned income tax credit, the health care benefits, the low-income housing benefits. These are not some obscure benefits that few people get. These are common benefits. And what may be true, not everybody gets them. I think the number of people who are getting $20,000, $25,000 benefit worth of benefits is quite high. And there's no question.
Glenn, again, you're saying you think, but the facts defy what you think. That's the problem. When we actually narrow it down, it's not true.
Mark,
Glenn, it's not true.
You add up.
You got 2 Pinocchios today. People are reviewing your analysis and saying why it's not true.
No.
A lot of these people are working while they're getting benefits. You can go down and break your argument apart over and over.
If
your
you're
philosophy
working, the benefits are not as great.
Your philosophy is
Mark,
so extreme, Glenn, that it makes Ayn Rand look like Mother Teresa.
You've got to get... No. Mark, if you look and add up the standard benefits in the state of Wisconsin for daycare, for health care, for earned income tax credit,
Glenn,
for
you're cooking the numbers to try to be your argument.
We are not cooking the numbers at all.
It's a fantasy family you're putting together, and you've been proven wrong.
Nope,
multiple times.
Congressman, if I can jump in here, Glenn, I'd like to hear your full explanation on. Go ahead.
Sure. If you look at the memo, and I wish you had a chance to go over it, if you add up, those are the big 5 benefits. And there are lesser benefits as well, but the big 5 would be daycare, earned income tax credit, health care, low-income housing, and food stamps. If you take, say, a single person making $10,000 a year, you add up those 5 benefits by itself, and I think you get something like 25, 30, 32,000 or something. That's not an outlier. That's not a strange family. And if I would have given that family, say, 3 or 4 kids instead of 2 kids, the number of benefits would be greater. Now, the point I was trying to make, though, is not that it's over generous or making fun of the family. The point I was trying to make is that it's unfair that if you have 2 people in identical situations and one decides to get married and one decides not to get married, the person who gets married loses tens of thousands of dollars. And we have to ask ourselves,
Mr. Grothman,
as a country,
don't you think you're broad brushing the system when you say that? It's like you're parceling out a very small part of a program and saying that there's something wrong with the total social structure here, to the point where everybody who gets assistance is being bribed by the state of Wisconsin. That's what it sounds like.
No, I have not given a broad brush thing. I am saying when you have this many benefits, it affects 2 decisions. It affects your decision, should I marry somebody who has a strong income, and it affects your decision, should I work much harder, because the more you work, the more you have to pay for your housing, the more you have to pay for and all that. And it's a very significant
And I have to ask you, Mr.
problem.
Grothman, have you come across people in Wisconsin that have made that decision? I mean, have you actually talked to people that said, it's so good on assistance, I've decided not to get married? Have you actually run into those people?
I have talked to people who are related to people like that and have given me anecdotal stories. And if you look at the memo, you will see it is not an outlier family. You could do the same thing. I don't know where you are located in New York. If you went out there and talked to social services and said, I want to add up what benefits am I entitled to if I have 2 kids and I'm making $10,000 a year, you would get a similar number.
All right. Gentlemen, I've enjoyed the discussion. Congressman Mark Pocan, also Glenn Grothman, welcome to Congress. This will be interesting. Good to have you with us tonight, gentlemen. Thank you so much.